Welcome to Tradutex Portuguese Lessons Podcast. Olá, eu sou a Helena, and on this episode I want to talk to you about the verb to have in Portuguese. The verb to have in Portuguese is the verb ter. Ter. Ter, it's also a very irregular verb, just like the two verbs we've done before, the verb ser and the verb estar. If you want to go through these verbs again, the two verbs that translate the verb to be in English, the most permanent to be ser and the less permanent to be estar, you can check the last two episodes. But on this one, we're going to focus on ter. So how do we spell it? From this episode on, I want to spell to you the words we need just using the Portuguese alphabet. If you still have any questions about the names for the letters in Portuguese, please listen to the episode number 4, episódio número 4, that is all about the alphabet. So the verb ter in Portuguese is T-E-R. T-E-R. And it translates the verb to have in English. In general, I would say that the majority of the situations when we use to have in English, we use ter in Portuguese. Obviously, there are some exceptions. For instance, when we want to talk about our age, in Portuguese we use the verb ter, but in English we use the verb to be. So if in English you say, I am 40 years old, for instance, in Portuguese we need to use not the verb to be, ser, or even estar, but the verb ter. That would be, eu tenho 40 anos. Okay, so this is one of the situations that we cannot exactly do a literal translation when we talk about our age. The word for age in Portuguese is the word idade. 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 Another situation where I've noticed that in English we use the verb to have, but in Portuguese it doesn't make sense. It's when we refer to something that we ate or drank. For instance, you go to the restaurant and you say, oh, I normally have, a steak or a fish or a soup or a beer or wine. I normally have. But in Portuguese, that doesn't make sense to us. For us, the idea of eat or drink, it's expressed with the verb to eat or to drink. In this case, eat is the verb comer, and drink is the verb beber. So we don't use the idea of have in terms of having food, of eating or drinking, food or drink. But I think in general you can trust the verb ter as a normal translation for the verb to have. So if you say, I have a house, I have a son, I have a job, I have a pet, I have a car. So all that we also use the verb ter to express those same ideas. So let's look at the verb itself. As I told you in the beginning, it's a very irregular one. So please pay attention because it's not an easy one in terms of pronunciation. It's very nasal and it might sound a bit strange sometimes. So the first person, I have, we say eu tenho. Eu tenho. Tenho. Eu tenho. How do we spell it? T-E-N-H-O. Tenho. Eu tenho means I have. Okay, let's put it in a little context, in a little sentence. So let's say I have a house. So house is the word casa. 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 So I have a house is like saying I have one house. For us, a house or one house, we use the same word uma that you already know from number 1, the feminine one. So I have a house is eu tenho uma casa. Eu tenho uma casa. In case you're wondering, is it really necessary to use the word eu to say I in the beginning? No, it's not. It's not necessary, but it is absolutely correct to use it. So it's really your call, your choice. If you prefer to say eu tenho uma casa, you can say it. If you prefer to say tenho uma casa, that's exactly the same meaning and it's also correct. So now that we've done eu tenho, let's see how do we say you have. This is not new for you if you were with me on the last episodes. And now you know that when we want to say in Portuguese you, we need to consider whether we're talking to just one person or more than one person, so a singular you or a plural you. And within the singular you also need to decide whether it's more formal or more informal. So when we conjugate a verb, we always start with the informal first. And the informal you is the word tu. Tu. And to say you have, we say tu tens. Tu tens. So you already know that every time we want an informal you, the ending for that verbal form is always ending at the sound sh. When we write it with the letter S, but then when we hear it, we hear a sh. So that's what you have on tens. Tu tens. How do we spell it? T E N S. Tu tens. Now, in case you wanted to say a more formal you, not if you're not talking to friends or family or to someone much younger than you, so you need the other you, the other singular you, the one we use with the você. So you have formal is você tem. Você tem. How do we spell it? T E M. Tem. So no sh at the end this time. That makes the difference between the informal tens and the formal tem. Do you want to make it a little sentences on this? Let's keep doing the example of the house so you can see it in a sentence. You have a house. If it's informal, is tu tens uma casa. But if it's formal, it changes into você tem uma casa. And we know that the tem, você tem, will also be the right verb form for he and she. That always happens when we conjugate the verbs in Portuguese. The verb form we use for formal you is the same we use for he and she. That doesn't mean that they mean the same. They do absolutely mean different things. Formal you, você is the you, he and she, ele, ela is he and she. But they just happen to use the same verb form. So if you want to say he has a house, we go ele tem uma casa. Ele tem uma casa. But if it's she has a house, it goes ela tem uma casa. Ela tem uma casa. So don't forget about this. Você tem, ele tem, ela tem. The word tem is good for the three situations. And now let's move on for we. We have. Nós temos. Nós temos. How do we spell it? T, E, M, O, S. Temos. We have a house. Nós temos uma casa. Nós temos uma casa. And the last one, that it's again valid for 3 different situations. I'm talking about the plural you. This time it doesn't matter if it's formal or informal. We only have one word to say you in case you're talking to more than one person, our plural you. And it will use the same verb form we use for they. But in Portuguese, we have a masculine they and a feminine they. So the plural you is the word vocês, vocês, and you have plural is vocês têm, vocês têm. Okay, you might find this one a bit strange because it's like the tem we had before for você, ele, ela, but we double the nasal sound. So instead of saying tem, we have a double têm, têm. It's important to keep your mouth open, so don't close your lips at the end. How do we spell this one? T, E, but this time, this one takes a circumflex accent. Circumflex is that accent that seems like a triangle. Okay? So T, E, com acento circunflexo, M. So it's just like the tem we've done for singular. Você tem, ele tem, ela tem. But that circumflex there on the E letter, it will double the nasal. So instead of tem, we have têm, têm, têm. Okay, so you have plural is vocês têm. They have masculine is eles têm. They have feminine elas têm. Don't forget about the fact that if you have a mixed group of men and women, we always use the masculine. So ladies and men all together, and I want to say they have a house, I say eles têm uma casa. Only if I only have ladies, I use elas têm uma casa. So I want to go through the verb again with you. Now you know how do we spell and how we pronounce each verb form. Let's just repeat once again from the beginning. I will give you some time to repeat after me. Eu tenho. Tu tens. Você tem. Ele tem. Ela tem. Nós temos. Vocês têm. Eles têm. Elas têm. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. See you soon. Até breve. Tchau. Obrigada.